Good afternoon, members of the media, wider looking and viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. First of all, let me apologize for being a little late this afternoon. Cabinet deliberations went a lot longer than we had expected today. And I have with me, as you would see, three of my colleagues, the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Social Services and Family Services, and the Minister of Education. I'd like to start ladies first and ask the Minister of Social Development and Family Services to go first, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am very pleased to advise the national community that in keeping with this government's policy to care for and protect the vulnerable, we have developed a National Social Mitigation Plan to cushion the impact of the economic downturn on the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The plan was developed after a series of public consultations. We had them in the North, the Central and South Trinidad and in Tobago. We also did a number of focus group sessions. We had questionnaires, we had interviews, and we had a number of surveys. And the groups that participated in these activities were the civil society. We had social sector experts, we had ministries, we had the youth, and we had general members of the public. So it was a wide-ranging exercise. And at the end of that exercise, the consultants prepared 2 working papers for the compilation of a National Social Mitigation Plan, one for Trinidad and one for Tobago. Now, the National Social Mitigation Plan is based on those 2 working papers and the Thailand experience, and it was prepared by UWI's Health Economic Unit under the leadership of Professor Carl Theodore. Now, the theme of the National Social Mitigation Plan is building resilience to secure our nation. And its aim is to equip persons with resources and tools to cope in the short term and by the medium term to be able to overcome the consequences of that downturn. And the persons targeted are primarily the retrenched, the unemployed, low-income families, youth, persons with disabilities, and poor families and individuals. The focus of the plan is on human capital development, and it is guided by the principles of sustainability, empowerment, and continuous improvement. It will also entail the enhanced coordination and integration of the approximately 100 existing social programs that we have. It will also focus on improving efficiency and effectiveness within those programs and ensuring value for money. The recommendations contained in the plan include short-term programming and measures for retrenched workers, assessment of the disabled sector, exploring the introduction of unemployment insurance, productivity, innovation, and enterprise development, poverty protection through financial security awareness. And ladies and gentlemen, these recommendations are expected to form part of our national budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now ask Minister Dillon to address us.
Good afternoon, members of the media and members of the listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. The government continues to demonstrate its concern for the health, safety, and security of both the officers of the prison system and, of course, the inmates. Today, I wish to inform the public that the Cabinet has approved a budget of $53.6 million for an upgrade to the remand prison at Golden Grove. The upgrade will look into areas such as electrical system, mechanical system, and the plumbing system. Just by way of history, one can recall that the Golden Grove prison was in fact constructed in the 1940s, and it was in fact a home or a barracks for the airmen of the Royal Air Force in those days. It was converted to a prison there sometimes after that. Since that time, there have been several renovations and some adjustments to the prison. However, today, we fully understand that there is a need to do some upgrade of the remand prison system, realizing, of course, that those in remand are not yet convicted. and are still awaiting trials. It's outside there in the public domain that we do have people in remand serving as much as 15 years or waiting for their trials. So the government, with its concern for the health, safety, and security, has approved that budget of $53.6 million. You recall that the remand prison consists of a two-story building with a north wing and a south wing. It was constructed with approximately 180 cells, designed originally to hold about 3 persons each. However, today's population rate indicates that each cell will hold between 8 to 10 persons. Again, demonstrated a bit of overcrowding. Not only that, we continue to use the PL system in this cell. While there is a communal showers and washrooms between the two north and the south, and at the outer end of both wings, they continue to use the PL system in the cell. Again, looking at the safety, security, and of course the health concerns, the sanitary concerns of the remandees, which also affect the prison officers themselves. This upgrade will look at the sewer treatment, the wastewater and sewer treatment, the plumbing and fire protection system. To also look at the electrical system. You have to look at the ventilation and air conditioning system, the CCTV system, with a view of ensuring that the infrastructure itself leads to our philosophy of restoration justice, but not even that, moving the prison system to one of correctional facility, so that the environment, to a large extent, does not shape the individual while they are in remandees. We can move away from the PL system. The genesis of this really is to put toilet systems between, in and among the cells themselves, and get away completely from the PL system. And while there's a long-term plan for a new remand facility, which will take us probably about 5 years, we believe that it is important right now to address the present issues, hence the reason for government's approval. We put that in the context in terms of which is being constructed right next to the remand facility, video conference facility. Again, that will alleviate the movement of the remandees throughout Trinidad and Tobago in the justice and time scenario. That is roughly about 70% completed right now, and the contractors are on site working assiduously to bring that video conferencing facility into operation as soon as possible. So I wish again to reiterate that Cabinet has today approved a budget of $53.6 million to do the upgrade at the remand prison at Golden Grove. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Dillon. We'll now ask Minister Garcia to address you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. The Minister of Education is in receipt of the CXC CAPE results. The Ministry is having at present discussions with CXC in an effort to have those CAPE results issued either today or by the latest tomorrow. In addition, students will be able to access these results on their phones by tomorrow, it is hoped. The Ministry of Education has done an analysis, a detailed analysis on the performance of students in this exam. As you know, at the level of CAPE, students are tested in 2 units, Unit 1 and Unit 2. There has been a slight overall improvement in the performance of students in both units when we look at the performance of students in 2017 as opposed to the performance of students in 2016. In 2016, we had 94.6% of our students achieving acceptable grades, that is, between grades 1 to 5 in Unit 1. In 2017, we have 95.06% of students achieving acceptable grades, that is 1 to 5. In addition to that, of the 33 subjects that were written by students, we found that in 25 of those subjects, students scored 90% and above. In Unit 2, in 2016, 94.10% of students achieved an acceptable pass rate, that is, between grades 1 to 5, And in 2017, we had 94.44% of students achieving acceptable pass rates. Again, of the 32 subjects that were written by our students, we had in 24 subjects, our students achieved a pass rate of 90% and over. However, of great significance is the performance of our students at the higher levels, and that is students who have achieved grades 1 and grades 2. What we have found, again, in Unit 1, in 2016, we had 48.19% of students achieving grades 1 and 2. In 2017, there was a marked improvement where 53.05% of our students achieved grades 1 and 2. In Unit 2, again, we had significant improvements where this is concerned. Just give me 1 minute. In 2016, we had approximately 94.10% of students achieving grades 1 to 5. I mentioned that just now. And we had, there's a little mix-up here. My apologies. Yes, in Unit 2, in 2016, we had 47.2% of our students achieving grades 1 and 2. And in 2017, we had 52.29% of our students receiving grades 1 and 2. These are, in our estimation, very significant improvements. It shows very clearly that our students are performing better at these exams. We are hoping to have the results of CSEC released either later today or tomorrow. Today, this morning, before I left for the cabinet meeting, I received the results of the CSEC exam. Those were received only this morning, and we have not yet had the opportunity of doing an assessment of those results. We are hoping that before tomorrow, we'll be able to reveal to the population the performance of our students in these two areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ministers. Members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago, you all would recall that sometime around the 18th of July this year, the Honorable Prime Minister met with the Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, at the Parliament, and they had quite extensive, and it was reported afterwards, productive conversation for quite a few hours. There are a number of items that arose coming out of those discussions. There was a promise on the part of the government through the Office of the Attorney General to share certain proposed and draft legislation with the opposition, and in particular in the area of anti-gang legislation. There was also discussion between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition with respect to what has become known as the Marcia Ayers Caesar issue with the 53 cases that are at the Magistrates Court and currently awaiting some sort of deliberation and some sort of decision as to how it should go forward. Another area, an issue that was discussed, was the Prime Minister at the time promised the Leader of the Opposition that the government would provide statistical data that we had in our possession, as well as a package that sets out the anti-crime, non-legislative operational initiatives of this government. Because this government's position was that in addition to the legislation that has been pushed through the Parliament and led by the Attorney General and the rest of our House of Representatives, there are a number of other areas that we have been tackling, the issues of crime and how to deal with criminal activity. I am here today to report to you that on the 4th of August 2017, the Acting Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs after consultation with the Substantive Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, wrote to Senator Ramdeen. So that's on the 4th of August, 2017, and we provided him with 2 separate parcels of proposed legislation. The first was with respect to the anti-gang legislation. We also at that time took the opportunity to present the opposition with all of the statistical data that the government had with respect to gangs and what was going on with gangs, as well as a sworn affidavit of the Acting Commissioner of Police as to why the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is of the view that anti-gang legislation should be brought back to Parliament and passed. We also took the opportunity to propose a very unique piece of legislation which currently exists in Jamaica called the Zones of Special Operations and Community Development, as an opportunity to have discussions with the opposition. If you do some research, you will see that this is legislation recently passed by the Parliament, supported by both the opposition as well as the government in Jamaica. The government in Jamaica only has a 1-seat majority that allows the Prime Minister, on the advice of certain elements of the Jamaican Defence Force and the Jamaican Police Force, to declare certain zones where it would be akin to giving them unique powers to go in and cordon off those zones and do certain things. We have proposed this to the opposition as a discussion piece and as part of a hope that we can have a conversation with the opposition as to another way or method for conversation on how to deal with crime and the criminal elements. We have invited the opposition by providing them with the anti-gang legislation that existed before, which you would recall was passed by them when they were in government. We've also proposed some new legislation under the anti-gang, and we've told them, come and tell us, sit down with us at the Attorney General's office, tell us what your difficulties with the legislation are, and let us work together to address it and come to Parliament, hopefully, with pieces of legislation that would be consensual between the opposition and the government. That took place at the beginning of August. We had asked Senator Ramdeen to provide us with a response and as to how they would want to meet, or in writing their proposals by the beginning of this week. As of today, we have heard nothing from the opposition with respect to what we've provided them with. We have not even received a letter of acknowledgement. These letters were hand-delivered to Senator Ramdeen on the 4th of August. Today, prior to Cabinet, the Honourable Prime Minister wrote to the Leader of the Opposition, and it was hand-delivered to the Opposition's office, and I have copies here for you of the Prime Minister's letter to the Leader of the Opposition, setting out a 7-page spreadsheet of some of the anti-crime and non-legislative operational initiatives undertaken by the various areas and ministries in government in our fight against crime and the criminal activity that is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. This spreadsheet, which I will also give to you here today, starts off with the Ministry of National Security and their General Administrative Division, what they've done, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, the SSA, the Immigration Division, the Forensic Science Centre, the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, what we're doing with Land Registration and Registrar General's Department, the Financial Sector, the Family and Children's Division, Human Trafficking, Prison Reform and Security Accomplishments. The Minister of National Security has addressed us directly on one of those initiatives today, and the criminal justice system. This was sent to the Leader of the Opposition today by the Honourable Prime Minister, and concludes that he trusts that all of the above and the enclosed would now pave the way for productive discussions between the government and the opposition for the benefit of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Because we at the government level are strongly of the belief that what we must do must resound for the benefit overall of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. You would also recall that one of the areas discussed at that meeting between the Honourable Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, as I said a short while ago, was how to deal with the 53 cases that are currently stuck at the magistracy. The Prime Minister himself laid out the government's position when this first arose, that there was a Chinese wall between the government and the judiciary, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, and what was taking place with these 53 cases. At the time and at that discussion, one of the areas proposed was that we could try and bring legislation to the Parliament to deal with this area and to see whether a resolution could be obtained between the opposition and the government. The leader of the opposition was very, very clear that the opposition would not support any proposed legislation brought by the government. Now, at this point, I'd like to say that that legislation that was being proposed was coming from the stakeholders, a plea from the stakeholders of the criminal justice system to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, because as the Prime Minister said, we saw ourselves as distanced from the decisions that took place leading to the stalemate of the 53 cases in the magistracy by the former Chief Magistrate. The Prime Minister has sought independent advice and has obtained independent advice from Senior Counsel, which was presented to the Cabinet today, and the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago has taken a decision on the leadership of the Prime Minister to follow an option that was presented to us. And that option is what was formerly called an interpretation summons, also known in the United Kingdom as a case stated by the Attorney General. So what the government is going to do, having given enough time for the various stakeholders to try to resolve these matters, and we as the government not wanting to go into an area that was not within our remit, because these cases, of course, were not within the remit of the government. It's between the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, other prosecutors, and defense of the accused. A dispute had arisen between the former Chief Magistrate that we now, and the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, which is also now in litigation. The government has taken advice at the level of the Prime Minister, and this is the advice we're going to follow. We will be going to court via the Attorney General, and we hope to file these proceedings next week, where we will basically lay the facts out as we know it via affidavit to the High Court, and we will set out what are the various provisions of the existing law that apply, and we will then invite the High Court to make a decision and to come to a conclusion as to how these 53 cases should be dealt with going forward. One of the immediate benefits of this option is that interested parties, we would expect the DPP, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, the Law Association, the Criminal Bar, anyone who believes that they should intervene in these proceedings to come and make submissions to the judiciary via the High Court for a determination as to how these 53 cases should be dealt with going forward. So the government is going to exercise this option. We are going to place the facts before the judiciary as well as the laws that exist and ask the judiciary to determine a way forward for a matter that is squarely within the remit of the judiciary. Interested parties can intervene and participate in these proceedings. And this is the best way, we believe as a cabinet, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, this matter should be dealt with for the greater public interest and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So those are the announcements that we've come out here to make today. We expect those proceedings, this case stated, this application by the Attorney General, which is formally an interpretation summons. So we will not be the ones as the government arguing as to how it should be dealt with, but rather putting that at the doorstep of the judiciary along with the facts and the laws that exist, and we expect interested parties to come forward and then argue or make their submissions to the High Court, and of course there's an appeal process all the way up to the Privy Council. We expect and we hope that everyone will participate with the judiciary, who will have management of this matter, in having it dealt with as expeditiously as possible. The judiciary is in control and will be in control of these proceedings, and we expect that all parties involved would do what is best for those persons who are directly affected by the 53 cases that are currently stuck at the magistracy. At this stage, at the end, I'll pass out some copies of the letter from the Honourable Prime Minister to the Leader of the Opposition along with the spreadsheet I've referred to. I'll invite some questions at this stage. Jules.
Just to clarify, your announcement concerning going to the court, the AG representing the government seeking the court's direction in this matter, that then brings an end to the option of bringing legislation to the parliament?
Certainly does, and it's not the AG representing the government's interests. As we say and we maintain, the government has a very, very limited role in this. One of the roles we could have brought legislation. The opposition have said squarely, frontally, and repeatedly that they will not support any legislation that is brought. So in a situation like that, we're telling the court, well, look, this is the state of the existing law, because we have opinions that say under the current law, the matters can be resolved. So we're saying, you, the court, please decide in a non-adversarial manner by the government. So we're literally placing it on the table. We will stand back and allow the parties to persuade the court as to how it should be dealt with.
This follows, I guess, on the Prime Minister's position against the opposition's position that a tribunal should be set up to look into this under the powers granted to the Prime Minister in the Constitution.
Correct, but I think that is very misplaced. Anyone who looks at Section 137 of the Constitution, that tribunal is really for disciplinary matters, impeachment matters, etc. That's not what occurs here or arises here. That's not going to solve the persons affected by the 53 cases. And we are very, very far from utilizing the Section 137 proceedings.
How soon can you see these matters being resolved?
That will lie. One of the good points about this, that resides directly and is within the control of the judiciary and those persons who are most affected.
Is there a time limit for submissions to be?
That will be determined by the court and whoever the judge is in charge of his or her own proceedings. I can tell you, it is possible. Years ago, there was a situation, and I was involved in it, where the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions had decided to lay charges against a then sitting Chief Justice. You may recall that matter, I think it was in 2006. And we went from the High Court proceedings all the way to the Privy Council within a matter of 3 months and got a decision from the Privy Council. My recollection is the case was started in the High Court in June. The Court of Appeal heard the appeal in July. The Privy Council heard their appeal at the beginning of the Privy Council term in September, and they delivered a decision either by October or November. So once the judiciary and those who are participating move with haste, it is possible for matters to be resolved in that short time frame. The government is merely facilitating an approach to the court for the court to determine how to go forward.
Can I ask the Madam Minister a question about the National Social Mitigation Plan?
Of course you can.
Madam Minister, I'm interested to find out how many people is it envisaged will fall under the plan, and what is the proposed budget for it?
There are no specific numbers. We are targeting groups. So if you look at the you look at the unemployed, you look at retrenched persons, you look at youth, you look at poor and disadvantaged families, you look at persons with disabilities. It's a wide segment of the population, so we do not have specific figures because we are dealing with sectors.
Unemployment is 4.5%, that is maybe 28,000. Low-income people, another 10% of the population, that is 60,000. You're looking at least 100,000 if you include disabled and other people. Would you not agree with that?
It is possible, but I would not want to venture a figure at this time. But it would be a large number.
And in terms of the budget, what you're looking at $3 billion?
We have not finalized a budget, but we have to take it within a context. The National Social Mitigation Plan looks at coordinating and integrating all of the social sector programs. There are currently approximately 100 programs. At present, all of those programs have been funded and are funded. For example, at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, our monthly bill for our 3 social safety net programs is $377 million. And despite the economic downturn, there have been no reduction in those programs. So the government, we have looked at the plan and we anticipate that we will be able to implement the plan. The plan has been agreed to in principle. It has not been approved because we are going to be looking in detail at the plan at FNGP because we are going to be looking at the cost factor.
Come on.
By putting it in the hands of the institution that is sort of responsible for this situation anyway.
There can be absolutely no merit, respectfully, to that argument whatsoever. The government is actually taking control in its limited remit, placing the matter squarely before the only body that can determine it. For example, let's speak hypothetically. If the government went to the parliament with legislation, you have an opposition who are saying they're not going to support the legislation. They then decide to challenge the legislation afterwards, even though the legislation may or may, let's say it requires a simple majority. It then gets right back into the court system. So why would we as a government go down that route? If the opposition was willing to sit down and deal with the matter via legislation, that is what we held out. In fact, the Attorney General did draft legislation, send it out, and that is when we started to get the negative feedback. So the government is not shirking its responsibilities whatsoever and is actually taking control of a situation that it has allowed, rightfully so, stakeholders to be in control of for the past couple months. So the government has now stepped in to say, look, let's gather the facts, here's the law, place it squarely before the body that constitutionally has to decide these matters, and now parties can intervene and make their submissions. Clint?
Given what we're talking about here with these cases, could the opposition or anybody else take any step to derail the process or delay it in any way, or is this process basically unchallengeable by anybody?
The process is unchallengeable from the point of view the Attorney General does have the power to lay the case before the court, and as I say, it's the equivalent of an interpretation summons. I would certainly hope that for the quick resolution or expeditious as possible resolution of these 53 cases, no one would intentionally delay. And let's put Trinidad and Tobago on notice now. The government is going to go next week, place this case before the High Court, and let us now as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago look on and see if anybody is going to play politics with those accused in the 53 cases and their rights. We have done all that we can once we put that case before the court.
During the recess of the judicial...
We will file the case during the recess, yes, because we think enough time has passed and it is time for it to be resolved.
What about any concern of overreach or the government breaching the Great Wall of China, as the Prime Minister put it, between the government and the judiciary in this action?
The answer is that does not occur here whatsoever. In fact, the government is just being responsible, placing the facts before the court. So there's no overreach. We're not making accusations, we're not making allegations, we're not pointing fingers. Our job is merely to place the bland facts before the court. The court is aware of what is the applicable law, and then, as I say, we take a step back and allow the parties to make the submissions as to how it should be dealt with.
Mr. Young, well, Mrs. Airseas has also filed her own action in the High Court. Is there any possibility that the ruling in that case may be affected by this action in any way?
No, because this action is really about the determination as to how the criminal justice system should deal with the 53 cases. I haven't seen Ms. Airseas's action, who I think is a judicial review, I'm not sure. I haven't seen what her action is, but it can't affect, or it should not affect, when you're asking the court to interpret how these 53 cases should be dealt with. I think she's claiming a breach of her rights.
Okay, and I have a couple of questions for the Minister of National Security.
Please.
You announced that Cabinet approved the budget for the upgraded Golden Road prison, but recently they've been highlighting the issues at the Immigration Detention Center. Are there any plans afoot to possibly look into upgrading the facilities there or any other prisons?
There are plans to upgrade the Immigration Detention Center. In fact, as we speak, there's work going on right now at the detention center. We are doing repairs to the roof right now. We're looking at the air conditioning system and the detention center. But in the budget for 2018, we have asked for allocation to do some further repairs and renovation at the Immigration Detention Center at Kumuto.
Question. There is a proposal, if I'm not mistaken, before Cabinet for a new immigration detention center. Is that something that is being considered?
No, there is a proposal for extension to the present immigration center, do some renovation and extension to the present immigration center. That's for 2018. That's part of the budget preparation, part of the budget preparation for 2018 fiscal year.
How many people on remand and how many students did keep?
Two completely unrelated questions.
Unrelated questions. All right, you want the first question. On remand right now, there are just about over 1,000 people in remand prison at Golden Grove right now. Remember, the other remand is in some of the other prisons, but at Golden Grove right now, we have just over 1,000.
And now the minister, let's let the Minister of Education
answer. Don't relate both of them, please. Don't put them together.
How many students?
There's no nexus between both. I hope not.
Obviously, there's no correlation. I can safely say that there were 8,140 students writing the CAPE exam in both units 1 and 2. A breakdown would show that 3,382 students were boys or male, and 4,758 students were female.
What's the difference between 1 and 2, just by the way?
Normally, students write Unit 2 at lower 6. Normally, students write Unit 1 at lower 6 and Unit 2 at upper 6. In some cases, depending on the preference of the subject teacher, a student can write Unit 2 in lower 6 and Unit 1 in upper 6. It all depends on the teacher and what that teacher proposes.
Yes.
Michael Joseph, Newsday. What can you tell us about the scholarships as it relates to the students who have sat CAPE for the May-June exams going?
As I indicated, we got the results, those results only yesterday. We did an analysis. It will take us about 2 to 3 weeks before we determine who the students will benefit from scholarships. We have not yet determined that.
Do you have any plans as to how many in the different areas, such as the sciences, how many you plan to give for sciences, how many for business, etc.?
Cabinet 2 years ago agreed that there will be a cap of 400 scholarships. We did not have a cap on particular subject areas. Overall, 400 scholarships will be granted, and it all depends on the performance of our students.
Clint?
Minister, could you give us an update as to where things stand regarding the progress, if any, that Mr. Muti is making re the vessels in the seabridge? Because we now have a situation where you have police investigation.
Have a what?
His own
right.
inquiry, as you mentioned. The port is doing its own investigations. You have the Integrity Commission, possibly a joint select committee as well. Now, one would argue, there have been arguments across the board, as you would be aware, that there are flaws in all 4 processes.
All right.
So is this a situation, is the government concerned that when you have all these different so-called investigations happening, that you could possibly result in duplication, things, the actual picture not being found? And could you maybe speak to the continued criticisms as well as to the effectiveness of the cabinet-appointed investigator and what resources are being given to him, and perhaps why is this option, what does this option present that the others don't?
Absolutely. This is not, first of all, let me start off by stating this is not unique. This is not an unusual or first-time situation. For example, if you look at the whole CLF-CLICO matter, the CLF-CLICO matter, there was a sole commissioner doing a commission of inquiry, a police investigation taking place under the guidance of the Director of Public Prosecutions at the same time. You had a number of other investigations that were carried out by the central bank at the same time. That's one example. We have the fullest confidence in Mr. Muti, and we don't think the process is flawed at all. What Mr. Muti has been asked to do by the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago is a fact-finding exercise. The Prime Minister will address this fully. He's going to Tobago and he's going to be meeting with Tobagonians, and he's going to address this fully on Monday. But what I can say at this stage is that Mr. Muti is being provided with resources out of the Office of the Attorney General, any resources that he requires to complete his mandate, which is, I say, really is a fact-finding exercise, and for him to present a report to the Prime Minister within a 30-day period, he will be provided with those resources. I also want to use the opportunity to correct something that appears to be a miscommunication. As far as we are aware, there's no investigation taking place by the Port Authority. All right, that was really a reference to the appointment of Mr. Muti as an investigator. The Integrity Commission has its own mandate, its own powers, etc. As we're all aware, the Integrity Commission can be carrying out an investigation. The police can be carrying out one at the same time. A commission of inquiry can be going on at the same time. So there's no crossing of the lines. The government is committed, depending on what Mr. Muti finds, and we don't want to preempt anything, if there is any action to be taken coming out of what he brings to us, we will take it, be it civil action or passing it on to the police, etc. So it's 30 days. Let's just wait and see what the outcome is, but we do not think the process is flawed. We've heard a lot of hollow criticism and a lot of commentary on the other side. It might be an opportune moment to just point out, because I've heard the leader of the opposition leading the charge and attempting very desperately to find a conflict of interest. I saw one being debunked last night, her suggesting at the QREP interchange there's a KFC and a Pizza Hut, and that's a conflict. I mean, that's laughable, as Mr. Wilson is laughing there, quite rightly. And Mr. Muti came out and said, well, hold on, that's a rental property and has nothing to do with me whatsoever. Ms. Kamala Prasad Bisesa should throw her mind back to when she sat in her Prime Minister Basdeo Pandey cabinet, and a decision that she would have participated in to have, on 2 occasions, sole individuals appointed. One was Jim Davis, was appointed by the cabinet, of which she was a part, to look into allegations surrounding the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service using Jeep Cherokees. And then another one that she would have participated in was the appointment by that cabinet of Lennox Dial Singh to look into the first Piarco inquiry. Correct. But as I say, this is a fact-finding mission. I am not sure, I don't have it before me, what the cabinet decision was there and what he's being asked to do. That's Jim Davis or Lennox Dial Singh. But there's nothing wrong with anyone sitting down with commissions of inquiry. You very often have persons who are not judicial or legally trained sitting down and presiding over it. Just one at a time. We had Kamal first.
But Mr. Muti himself has admitted that he's never done something of this nature. So then how then can the public have confidence in a report that he produces if he has never really done?
Now remember, the genesis of this report was calls being made of the Prime Minister to take certain action. A Prime Minister can't take action with respect to a board, with respect to a minister, with respect to other persons, unless he has somebody independent or gathering of the facts. So that's what it is. You can't take action as a Prime Minister based on what you see in the newspapers or you hear on a television, etc. So Mr. Muti has been asked, and he has accepted the mandate of go look into the facts and produce a report.
Why Mr. Muti? Why was he selected as opposed to anybody else?
As
When
I
he
say,
himself has admitted that he's not done something like this.
The Prime Minister will address those directly next week, Monday, and let's just wait for that.
Can I ask if you recommended Mr. Muti to the Prime Minister?
You can ask that.
Yes. So the question.
And as I say, the Prime Minister will address these matters. What happens with a cabinet and the types of discussions that I may or may not have with the Prime Minister and other cabinet members may or may not have with the Prime Minister is something that is shrouded in a level of confidentiality.
How did Mr. Muti's name get pitched to the Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister will answer that question, I'm sure, if you address it to him.
I'm just seeking clarification on the operationality of this particular mode of investigation. You make reference to commissions of inquiry.
Fact-finding, yes.
Right. There's a Commission of Inquiry Act that governs how the commission operates, if it's one person or 3 or 4, how persons who are the subject of an investigation are to respond to requests from a commission of inquiry. A sole investigator, under what law would that person operate under? For example, the investigator could ask someone, I would like this information, and the person could well say, I don't acknowledge your authority because I don't know what authority you have to do this.
Let me start by saying this is a cabinet-appointed investigator. So it is the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago have appointed an individual to look into a certain situation and to do a fact-finding exercise. This is not a private institution This is a statutory body, i.e. the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. You have a Ministry of Works and Transport as well. Those, of course, fall under the ambit of authority of the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. Ultimately, that's where the buck stops. So it is the equivalent, an analogy is, and it happens every day in private enterprise. When you have a tribunal, for example, looking into an allegation of theft by an employee, etc., of course the employee is entitled to say, I am not providing any information. There will always be consequences that may or may not flow out of these decisions. Mr. Mute is appointed by the Cabinet. The Cabinet would like everybody to participate. We hope and trust that persons who are asked to participate will participate in the matter. Who doesn't participate, that is their prerogative.
Just a quick clarification whether the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, would have been satisfied that there would be no exposure legally. A person, let's say at the end of this investigation, a report is handed in and so on, action taken, and one of the subjects of that investigation decides to take action legally because they were not satisfied due process was followed, or even the law itself.
It's always open to that. The former government had a commission of inquiry into Las Alturas. You all are familiar with that? At the time, they came to Parliament with a lot of charade, and they said that they were pursuing Las Alturas, and they even went on to say, call the leader of the opposition's name, and then the now Attorney General's name in that whole charade. The taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago spent over $35 million in a Las Alturas commission of inquiry. There was a former judge, Court of Appeal judge leading it, 2 other commissioners, so a 3-man commission of inquiry, high-powered lawyers advising, cost us $35 million. Ask yourselves now where that has landed and where it is. It's currently being challenged by 2 persons named in the report. So it doesn't matter what modality you take. A police investigation can be challenged by persons who are charged. It does not matter what modality you take. Commissions of inquiry, as I've just told you, are challenged.
By the police, commissions of inquiry.
Your question was whether...
Guided by law.
Correct. Well, it's guided by law, but they're still being challenged. They're being challenged for not following proper due process. They're being challenged for breach of natural justice. They're being challenged for all of these things. That is the commission of inquiry.
The whole issue of getting people to cooperate. You want a report that is obviously comprehensive and has full participation. The question is, can Mr. Mute demand of people that they participate?
Do you know that when the police come to you, and the police have the law behind them, they're the persons charged with the responsibility of upkeeping the criminal law in Trinidad and Tobago. If the police come to you and ask you to provide them with something, you still have the discretion as a citizen of Trinidad, as a person, an individual, to provide it or not to provide it. Your lawyer may advise you say nothing. So it doesn't change anything. But there are consequences that may flow from such decisions. So let's wait. Let's see what it throws up. Let's see what it brings.
Is the board of the Port Authority going to retain their position during the pendency of Mr. Mute's fact-finding inquiry?
Yes. Any other questions? Yes, Jude.
Investigation Mr. Mute hands to the Prime Minister, I guess, and then what happens at that point? Does the Cabinet look at it, it goes to Parliament? Or
you all are asking for speculation and conjecture. Let's wait. I keep saying, no, well, let's wait and see. We've given a commitment. When it comes to the Prime Minister, it'll be brought to Cabinet. At that stage, we will review it and we will then take a decision as to how to go forward.
Does the fact that the board of directors of the Port Authority retain their positions indicate a level of confidence by the Cabinet and the Prime Minister in that board?
There is a level of confidence by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet in this board that is currently there. But as I say, we await the outcome of Mr. Mute's exercise.
The issue of the Immigration Detention Center for a bit. Minister Dillon, I know that Mr. Kaffir Cambot has been requesting to meet with you about detainees there.
Yeah.
Why haven't you not decided to meet with him, or is that something that's being considered? And on the issue of the length of detention at the Immigration Detention Center, I know you've given an explanation, but at some point, don't you think it's a bit inhumane, the length of time some people are allowed to stay there?
I am considering meeting with Mr. Kam. I've met with him before, and I certainly will meet with him again. I have met with several people concerning issues at the detention center. Now, with respect to the length of time personnel at the detention center, there are a number of challenges there. There are a number of issues why persons are held. For example, there are times when people who are at the detention center do not have any travel documents whatsoever, because to start with, they came in the country illegally. And coming in the country illegally, obvious reason, they destroy whatever travel documents they would have. So it's difficult at times to even identify what nationality they are. So that poses some challenge to us. The other issue is with respect to repatriation. In the event that someone is held in the detention center, and the persons who are held there who have completed their term in prison, for instance, and they have to be deported, so they're held there temporarily while we deport them. For repatriation, one, the individual can present a ticket, a travel tickets, themselves or their family can present a ticket, or the High Commission or embassy in the country can also assist them by providing travel documents and tickets. Sometimes neither of those are forthcoming. Friends nor families would provide a travel ticket for them. The embassy sometimes and High Commissions do not provide any travel documents, and sometimes no travel, no tickets of travel. What happens now, the state has a responsibility to pay, to transport these individuals to the respective countries. I'm talking of places either Nigeria or Ghana or even the Caribbean countries to some extent. So there are several challenges there why people remain in detention center for more than is required. We repatriate, in fact, on average of about almost 100 persons per month, we repatriate outside of the detention center. But because of the rate with which the police and immigration continues to do their job, it's almost filled again as soon as possible. So that there's almost a revolving door right now, because we're doing an exercise together with immigration and so on, looking at the illegal entry of people into Trinidad and Tobago. So
come back to you, Anthony.
Just want to get an idea of what the response has been for GATE since the implementation of the means test. Have we seen a decrease in the amount of applications? What is the situation currently with regard to
I
that?
have stated last week that at this time we do not have the exact figures. We were waiting the issuing of the CAPE results. Those results came to us only yesterday. The students will have access to them tomorrow, and then we're going to see how that flows. At this point, we cannot make any determination with respect to what effect that will have. I need to make the point, however, that in applying the means test, one of the things that we have taken into consideration is the household income of students. Those students whose household income falls under $10,000 a month, they will pay nothing as tuition fees are concerned. And all this hurrah and concern that is expressed by some persons in the community doesn't bear any relevance. The great majority of our students who fall under $10,000 income, they will pay nothing. Students whose household income falls above $10,000 but below $30,000, all they will be paying is 25% of their tuition fees. I have already done an analysis to show that in some areas that will amount to $250 a month. That is a very small and insignificant charge on your tertiary education.
Anthony.
Two questions slightly off today's focus. The first one is the government committed to making the agreement with Sandals public? And are any banks, local banks, in jeopardy with regard to the HEC investigation? In July, you spoke about following the money. So the check must have gone to a local bank.
Let's answer the first question first. As I said earlier this week, the government continues to be in discussions and negotiations with Sandals. There, at the appropriate time, will be a disclosure by the government because we have nothing to hide. There is going to be full transparency with respect to what is the outcome of those hopefully fruitful discussions with Sandals. And actually, when you look at other jurisdictions, they have even what are the general terms, etc., agreed once we're permitted to do so. The second question with respect to, I think you're referring to the litigation commenced against 9 or 10 individuals by the Attorney General's office. correct. For Eden Gardens claim matter, if I may call it that. Yes, there was following of the money. I said very, very carefully at that stage, the matter is now before the court, is sub judice. The government did manage to locate what appears to be a bribe paid of $50,000. We have taken action with respect to it. And if in our continued investigations and developments, etc., we believe there's been any breach of the law by any financial institution, we certainly will bring it to the attention of the regulator. Kamal, sorry.
Mr. Dillon, can you say if part of the upgrade at the Golden Grove prison will involve outfitting the cells with air-conditioned units?
That is not our intention at this point in time.
All right, I'll take two more questions. Just now, Kamal.
Minister Dillon, you mentioned that you asked for allocation with respect to the detention center renovation works. What is that figure? And also, with respect to the Port of Spain prison, will any renovation works be done there as well?
Right. I can't give you that figure because that's a figure that's entered for budget presentation and so on, so I can't give you that figure right now. I don't know what would be approved, so I would not put that figure into the public domain just yet. We have ongoing repairs to the Port of Spain prison because, of course, you realize the state of that prison. So there's always ongoing repairs being done at the Port of Spain prison.
Let me just build on what Minister Dillon has said there for the understanding of the national community. We are in the preparation of the budget stage right now. What that encompasses is the various ministries, as he's indicated, making their submissions to both the Ministry of Planning for certain projects, etc., as well as the Budgets Division at the Ministry of Finance, and then the figures will start to become finalized. So right now is the identification of the various projects that our ministry would like to go ahead with, and then we'll see what we can do in the circumstances that we're in.
Another important topic, the Carib Parade race. Minister Dillon, it is set to be in jeopardy this weekend because of the failure of the SSA, I think, to assist. Are you aware of this situation?
I don't know why you use the word the failure of the SSA to assist. I do not have that information as far as I'm aware. We look at the Great Raid as contributing as a sort of a national event. The problem you may want to ask is whether there was a request of the SSA to assist. However, I'm going to tell you as Minister of National Security, I heard the comments this morning and I have instructed the SSA to assist because we would want to ensure that this event comes without, insofar as safety is concerned, we want to be able to at least prevent any sort of incident whatsoever. So we, as Minister of National Security, I have instructed the SSA to do whatever is required to ensure at least the safety requirements are considered, but there are other issues there, of course.
Anthony?
Are you aware that the CL financial shareholders have sought leave to appeal the Court of Appeal judgment in the matter involving
the CL financial shareholders have a hearing for leave to appeal to the Privy Council on the Court of Appeal's decision to appoint the provisional liquidators that, if my memory serves me correctly, is scheduled to be heard on the 20th of October.
Minister Garcia, finally, as we come to the end of school vacation and the reopening of school, what is the status of whatever upgrades or improvements that would have been done to the schools in the country?
Those upgrades and repairs are ongoing. On Friday, that is tomorrow, we are meeting with EFCL to get a comprehensive review of what has transpired so far. I can say from what we have been told, it seems as though we are going to meet the successes that we have been able to achieve over the last 5 terms, and that is most of our schools, if not all, will have their doors open. And this is the objective that we are working towards.
June, last 2 questions. June?
The Minister of National Security, the issue concerning the UK's advisory, the Ministry sent out a release.
That's correct.
You did raise in the Ministry did raise in its statement the language by the UK. They said there was a meeting and so on, but in terms of that language being changed, did you get any sense from the UK government that that language would be changed anytime soon? If you're saying that the government, through its agencies, has no information of any pending terrorist attack in Trinidad and Tobago.
And of course, I'll reiterate that we have no new intelligence or information that suggests that there's an impending attack. And we had engaged the British High Commission here in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the language that was used. And so they are following up on our discussion as to how soon they'll respond. I can't give a timeline. But definitely, we have asked whether there are any new information they can share. As I said in public domain, that with respect to terrorism and so on, we rely to a large extent on our international partners. And we continue to liaise with the British, the Americans, the Canadians, even the Turkish authorities, with respect to sense of confirmation, with respect to nationals of Trinidad and Tobago participating. Because while there are several anecdotal that we have been following, but we need confirmation, and our intelligence will depend to a large extent on our intelligence partners for confirmation. So we continue to engage and continue to engage our international partners in that domain, including the British.
Any of the intelligence they had that may have influenced their statement on that website?
No, they have not, and we have asked that question. So again, they're treating with that first. I can't tell you when they will respond, but we've asked whether they can share any further information that will allow them to make those kind of comments.
If, just 1 second, Anthony, if I may assist, well, 1 second, if I may assist Minister Dillon there, we asked the very pointed questions of the British. Is there any intelligence that they have that would have led to this? And the answer was a resounding no. We're waiting on what further information they may be providing us with. We also asked, is there something you've told us we haven't reacted to? The answer to that was no. We asked, is there something you're not telling us and you don't want to share with us? The answer to that was no. So we have registered very strong objection to the use of language that was used. And in fact, I think when we were in Cabinet this morning, there was a terrorist attack in Barcelona, Spain. As was pointed out to the British, unfortunately for them, they have had a number of attacks in London and Manchester over the past few months. So they're not speaking hypothetically. They had an attack in Northern Ireland this week as well. They're not speaking hypothetically. As the Minister has said, we have no such information.
Has the government considered travel advisory to local citizens going to the UK?
It's something that's always considered because all states are equal in the national system, and therefore there's nothing barring Trinidad and Tobago from advising our citizens in any country if we feel that they are threatened by whatever is happening in that country.
Given the several terrorist attacks in the UK this year?
It is probably something that we have to look at, not only as Trinidad and Tobago, but as small states in the Caribbean.
Thank you very much, members of the media. We appreciate your participation this week, and until next time.